you're watching our program, Freely and Critically. Today, our special guest is Professor Marianna Gladysh from Lviv University. So, dear Marianna, my first question is then for you, what is the situation in Lviv in general, in this war situation? Because bombarding has also touched Lviv. What is your experience and what do you think?
Yeah, good day, dear colleagues, dear viewers. I am very happy to be invited to this discussion, giving the possibility to tell you more of what is going on the western part of Ukraine, which is also affected by the war. So answering your question, yes, Lviv, we call it as a hub, the main hub for humanitarian aid, for internally displaced persons, a main logistic center for the military aid that is provided by our allies from the West. Of course, it has affected the 24th of February has affected the life of every Ukrainian. On the first day of the war, we were not shelled by the missiles, but then we had several already, and even 2 days ago, my city was under shelling. I mean, several missiles hit the electrical power stations in Lviv. The aim of shelling and sending missile is just to cut us from the supplies from the Western allies, to destroy the railway station, to threaten people. As I said, Lviv is a hub. Yes, we at least in Lviv have hosted more than 300,000 internally displaced persons. I mean, those that are staying in Lviv, though there were much more like using Lviv as a place to move further to Poland and then to other European countries. So at first days of the war, there was a great influx of people fleeing from the war. The first people were from Kiev region, because it's the closest to Lviv. It was easier for them to get. Then we had refugees from Kharkiv and other regions trying to find the place for them to stay. Many Lvivian citizens of Lviv just opened and were taking people from the railway stations to their houses, women with small children. Also, our authorities opened and equipped very quickly the gyms, the school halls, a big stadium in Lviv with beds and necessary things for this huge number of refugees, internally displaced persons. Our aim was just to help other Ukrainians, despite being as well afraid and scared what would happen in future. There was even one try of the Russian forces even to land not far from Lviv in one military base, but luckily we managed to destroy them. Our military destroyed them. So, and if we talk about our Lviv University, we had to stop the educational process. The authorities of our university decided, as in many universities, for 2 weeks in order just to cope with the situation. Then in 2 weeks, the educational process restored. And we are now working on a distant mode online. Unfortunately, there are some of our students that are now in the newly temporarily occupied territories, and it's very difficult for them to join online classes. But most of the students are in safe places, and we are able to work with our students, to have classes with them.
Marianna, then thank you especially for this idea, city as a hub, multidimensional hub. I mean, that's for refugees, for the military forces, for the social forces as well. And my question is, how do you think about university as some kind of hub, university as a hub of sciences? Ordinarily, we discussed a lot about networking of universities, you know, university in the Europe or university collaboration of universities. But ordinarily, we skip the possibility for university to be some kind of scientific hub or studies hub. You know, it means not as a not only as a coordinator, but as a hub, because probably many of students, for example, from the Mariupol or the other places, they travel through the Ukraine, they need to stop, they would like to continue their studies, you know, and universities step by step transform their old form, you know, as some autonomous institution into some kind new form, new challenge to be as a hub of science. What's your opinion about this one?
Yes, thank you for the question. Lviv, Ivan Franko National University of Lviv has already transformed in such hub. We have more than 2,000 students that have escaped from the affected regions, and they were hosted by our university in the dormitories, as well as the lecturers and teachers from other universities. Why I say that's a new kind of hub? Because the students fleeing and from the affected regions, yes, despite being given the places in the dormitories, it was decided by our authorities of the universities that they can as well join the educational process, not being at the same time enlisted as a full-time student. So they can do it on the volunteer basis. So apply or just turn to the authorities of different faculties, get the schedule, get the links, and join the lectures, the seminars, in order not to interrupt and continue their education. We, as a teachers in our university, are gladly welcoming them to our classes and giving them the possibility to participate in the seminars and so on and so forth. In future, we also suppose, and there is some that many of the students, unfortunately, for example, those that will not have the possibility to return starting from September, as the academic year in Ukraine starts in September, to return to the university, and many of them have already applied and just sent the request to become a full-time students of our university. And our rector said that in September, if they will still continue their wish or express their wish to become a full-time students of our university, so there we will not have any then choice just to accept them. It means that we are not taking the students from other university, but giving them the possibility of choice. They can either return to their universities and continue their study, but if they will still have a wish to continue studying a full-time students in our university, then we will accept it. In general, we say that starting already from 2014, when really the war started, yes, because now we have a full-scale invasion, but the real war started already in 2014. the number of the students to applying and becoming the students of our university has increased dramatically. Every year we have more and more students applying to become to our bachelor and master programs. And we expect this year that this number of the students, I mean, those who will become the first year students, master students, will increase as well. So in that way, of course, and in this way, we are becoming this hub, yes, for the students, for the teachers, yes, as well, because if the teachers of other universities will express, yes, their wish also to work with us, so we will not have the right just to reject it. As well, we have to expand, yes, and to enlarge the number and contacts and cooperation with our European partners in order to have this, to give our students for future the possibility for them, for the mobilities, for some experience of education and studying abroad in different universities. So now we are very much working on expanding our external cooperation, though Lviv is, our university is really good and is ranked as a high university, high top universities. We were the second among all the universities in Ukraine having Erasmus Plus cooperation agreements. Yes. That also makes Lviv University very much attractive to students of different regions to become a full-time students, and as well also gives us the possibility to propose students different options to study within the mobility programs, within these cooperation agreements we have in European universities.
We discussed with Mariupol University rector, and he mentioned that Lviv, your university, very helped for Mariupol University, because this university was destroyed by Russian forces as well. Many of professors, rectors, vice rectors who are still alive, they migrate, and some of them stopped in Lviv and tried to rebuild in some online or virtual situation in Mariupol, and Lviv University is involved into this project. Could you discuss some details about this one?
And just to add, just a few days ago, we had a similar interview on our program with Sergei Pakhomenko, politology from Mariupol University. So and maybe you even know him personally.
Yeah. So I will tell that me personally, and our university has a very close and good contacts with Mariupol University. Before the war, starting from 2017, we were partners in the joint Erasmus Plus K2 Action project, a Baltic Black Sea regional cooperation, and we cooperated within this project. Which turned out not only to be a project of scientific cooperation, but has gone beyond it, and our friendly relations, really friendly relations with Mariupol University, we were planning for further future projects, and I'm sure we will do them in future, despite that Mariupol University is relocated, but it will survive. It still exists and will exist. So we are hoping for further future fruitful cooperation, and of course this friendship that we have gained during these years. We were all very much worried about our friends and colleagues from Mariupol University, and as soon as we managed to get in contact with them after they were out of contact for more than two weeks, yes, and even as yes, I know Sergei personally very much, and I will maybe tell you that I even hosted him and his family in my house. And I asked him even before the war started, and at the very beginning, asked him and asked other colleagues just to leave Mariupol, because we somehow understood that it would be worse than in 2014. We were discussing with them, and they expected and they thought that it would be like in 2014, some shellings in the eastern part of the city, but that Russians wouldn't go so far, destroying completely the whole city. So and other colleagues that I know, other friends also, most of them fled to Lviv or to Lviv region, because they knew that they will be hosted in our families, in our houses, that our university will host the students, and it was announced and declared during the meeting of Mykola Trofimenko, the rector of Mariupol University, and our rector. So they had the first visit when the rector of Mariupol University managed to have after getting to Lviv. So that was the first meeting was with our rector of our university, and our rector confirmed that we are fully on disposal, and what we can do, what our university and staff can do for them in order to help them, yes, to the students. So we, as I said, so we provided the dormitories for the students and for the teachers. Those who know personally each other were hosting in our houses, because it means that it shows and it means that we are very much united, Ukrainians, and it doesn't matter the teachers or other people are from the eastern part, from the south, and from the northern part. So they feel like at home. They are in the western part of Ukraine, because Ukraine is one country and we are all Ukrainians, and we are like really united, and everybody, what we can do, in what way we can assist and help, we are trying and doing everything possible, trying to do our best to help, because we understand how awful it's like now to be those people are like homeless. Yes, they lost their homes, they lost everything, but they didn't lose the most precious, their lives. So I was stressing and telling them that the most important thing, that you are alive, everything will be restored, buildings will be restored, the life will change for better, we will have great future projects, but the most important that they are alive.
May I ask you now about political happenings and in relation to communication and diplomacy? Now we see some tension between Zelensky's team and Scholz's team, because German president was not invited to visit Kiev because of his previously over-friendly attitude towards Russia and all its corruption in Germany. And now Scholz is kind of resisting to visit Kiev, supposedly that he has to maintain unity position. So for that reason, opposition leader Merz decided to visit Kiev. And in the meanwhile, we see some controversy with Pope Francis, who is considering to visit Moscow, who made a very propagandistic statement that NATO's fault that the war in Ukraine started because NATO was too close to Russia, which is exactly Putin's words. So in the meanwhile, he's hesitant whether it's correct for Germany and the other countries to supply weapons for Ukraine. And Scholz is back and forth with his position. How do you see all that happening? Macron calling Putin continuously, But the United States is firmly behind, together with Boris Johnson from Great Britain, firmly behind the Ukraine. How do you see this dynamic in diplomacy?
Okay, let's start. There are different perspectives you asked, so let's start one by one. If we talk about Germany, yes, so we know that Germany was, how to say, involved in the peace keeping process, yes, from the very beginning of the war in 2014. Yes, and was participating in the Minsk process as one of the parts representing the European, yes, together with France. And we all are aware of the famous Steinmeier's formula, yes, which was like to some extent the Russian rhetorics concerning the some federalization of Ukraine, giving more autonomy to the eastern parts of Ukraine, which really wants to have some independence and so on. So we might say that from the very beginning of the war, the position of Germany was very controversial, yes. And even after the full-scale invasion, which started in 2014, though it was condemned by Germany in general, but the position was like something between, yes. So as we may say from diplomatic, they were trying to run between the drops, yes, not to irritating Russian Federation as much, and maybe to save, at least to save and the economic relations with the Russian Federation, because we understand so that Germany is very much dependent on the energy supplies, first of all Germany, yes, from the Russian Federation. And despite being warned by the Baltic states and Poland long ago, and Ukraine as well, that Russia's energy supplies and Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 are not only the purely economic and energy projects, but they also contain a threat because Russia is using every tool to pursue its own interest. And as we know, its interests are like to restore the USSR. We are not, if we can talk about the nowadays war, despite that this is the war against Ukraine as a nationality, as a country, because they do not want to accept its independence and the existence of the state, of Ukrainian state as it is. But that is only one part of the whole aim of this war. The whole aim of this war, like to restore the Soviet Union, which includes not only the within the borders of the Soviet Union, but also including the previous so-called socialist camp. So the game is and the goals are much higher. So I think that Ukraine just is the first step, yes, for the Russian Federation to go further, and the Baltic states and Poland, Czechia, Slovak Republic understands it very clearly because they have been affected already by the Russian Federation in previous times and know what can be expected. The history with the relations with Germany is a bit different. Yes, we know that Russia used huge resources, financial resources, in order to pursue its interest through Germany into the whole European Union, and have this put Germany, and not only Germany, but the whole EU, on the dependence of Russian supplies, yes, not giving them any possibility to move. So that is why our authorities, like showing with the not inviting Steinmeier. Yes, first of all, Scholz, he said that because the President Steinmeier was not invited to Kiev, that's why he will not visit it. But this tension means that Ukraine is showing that you can't be something between. You have to choose and to show a real solidarity and choose what side you are on. Not only something waiting in what, and you know that our ambassador of Ukraine to Germany, he after few weeks of the war, he even leaked his conversation, not naming, but we know who was representing the other side, and the German, I will not name it at two, but we all know. He said, so don't worry, everything will end in 24, 48 hours, and there will be another reality in which we will live and have to deal with. So it looks like that they were already ready, that Ukraine would be seized, occupied, and they will just continue their relations with the Russian Federation with a bit some shifts, but not very much.
So in that sense, just very briefly to interrupt before you answered step by step the other points, in that sense, this is yet another betrayal.
To some kind, yes.
Some kind, yeah.
Only Ukraine. That is the betrayal of the interest of the whole EU and many other countries. You know that, for example, Gazprom just cut off Poland, Bulgaria from the gas, saying if you're, they are blackmailing the whole EU, saying you should pay in rubles, yes, though the contracts are in other, in Europe and US currency. So they just blackmailing, and Germany as one of the main powers in the EU, the main driving forces of the EU, trying to negotiate and having the benefits of cooperation with Russia, didn't take into account all the risk, or didn't want to take into account all the risk, putting then with this under the risk the whole EU, at least the whole EU. So it's like a betrayal not only of Ukraine, I think, but the whole EU. France is a bit a different story. We know now that it was more strict, yes, on such position. So they are concerning constant calling. So that is one of the ways, one of the tools, yes, to negotiate a bit, try to negotiate, yes, try to have some contacts, trying to persuade Putin to stop this aggression, this war, like to maybe to propose something to him. Concerning Pope, it's another story, yes, with another background. So first of all, we should take into account the background of the Pope Francis. So he is not European, yes.
He's not John Paul II.
Yes, he's not John Paul II, knowing all the realities. He is from Argentina, and we may say that Italy in general was not very much first in, pro-Ukrainian, as we may say, yes, in the war, saying and supporting Ukraine very much. There were a lot of hesitations as well. Should they supply the weapons, at least, or any way? So, I think it has also influence on the position of Pope. And also we should take into account the ideology of the Catholic Church and Christianity in general. So I think the idea of the Pope is to work with the enemy. So his aim is just that he has to go to Moscow, and we know that during the second or the first day, don't want to be mistaken, but there was unprecedented step. Yes, he visited the Russian embassy while the popes are not doing that at all. So he personally went to the embassy of the Russian Federation in order to talk and to tell, just to give the message that the war is not an option, that it should be stopped. I think he is just sending the message that he should, like, as a person with the morality authority, moral authority, yes, he should talk to the aggressor. He's even ready to visit him, yes, in Moscow, in order to persuade. We all can also be very critical toward that, understanding that for Putin and his oligarch and many of the society, Pope is not a person that he and they will listen to, but at least from this point of view, he is trying, like, to show the message and trying to stop the aggressor in the way he can, and understand that it is the right way.
The Pope wants to touch the Satan and to bless and to chase away the evil spirit. That's the best way. But I'm afraid that he would be like a diplomacy person, shaking hands, having dinner together, which would be like, I cannot imagine the Pope sitting together with Hitler. I cannot imagine the Pope sitting together with Putin. It's
in any way, many of popes seated with many of dictators in the history, you remember. But I just remember as well that few weeks ago, Pope Franciscus first was invited to visit Mariupol in order to help, that's local people, in the search. And this invitation was repeated many times for Pope and his administration that keep silence all about this like provocation, But I think that many of Catholics in the world could understand that they will understand if he will try to come to Mariupol. In any way, we didn't see any attempt of him. That's my question. The other is about Nordic Europe or North Europe. I mean that, as you know, in your studies, you touch this question as well. And now we see like two different dynamics in the case of Ukraine. How behave Western Europe? I mean, first of all, Germany, Italy, Spain, French, and Nordic Europe. And not only Baltic countries, but as well Sweden, Finland, Denmark, which very helps, unexpected, I would say, that shows very big activity, and even Holland, I would say. Do you see some kind ordinary? We discuss a lot about two dimensions of European Union in Baltic countries. We always see this, separation of interests, that we not always could find the same language with those who are Mediterranean, those who are on the Nordic, on Nordic orientation. But the question is how it looks from a Ukrainian perspective, this two Europes in one European Union.
Mm-hmm. Ukraine was also always sure of our allies, of our neighbors. I mean, Eastern Europe countries, those who were in socialist camp as well, were sure of the Baltic states, or the countries that were under that knew, yes, what is Russian occupation, yes, because Soviet occupation very often we say it's a Russian occupation. Those countries didn't experience that. So these the countries of Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, the Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, it's like those that we're not hesitating about the help and support in every second, yes. To some extent, yes, it was not very much a surprise for us that the Nordic countries, I mean, the Finland, Sweden, and were showing we know that Sweden, for the first time being a neutral state, decided and shipped a lot of military aid. I think the reason is that they already starting from 2014, the countries felt their threat from Russian Federation against that could be possible against these countries as well. We remember a lot of the violation of the airspace borders of the Baltic and Sweden and Norway. So that is Sweden. Finland has another history. They remember the Cold War of this Winter War of 1939. So that's the history that they remember very well. So it means, and the countries, if we talk about Spain, Italy, France, they the experience for them as a big war, they didn't have any offense from the Russians for decades, yes. They were more affected during the Second World War by the Nazis, and the Russians the Red Army was seen as the liberators. In contrary, in the Baltic states and in many of the Eastern European countries, the so-called liberation of the Russian army was a new occupation, was another kind of occupation, and sometimes even worse than the Nazi occupation, because the Soviet regime did a lot of awful and horrible things. But when the whole world and Europe are talking about the Nazis' crimes, not very much is talked about the Soviet crimes, which was committed against the Baltic countries, Poland, Ukraine, and so on and so forth. That is why I think the historical heritage of the memory or historical memory is also that it is should be considered while we're taking into account the nowadays attitude of the countries, yes, in support, not only just declaration support, but in a practical support. Maybe you know that, for example, it was even for me a great surprise when one of the informational sources published published a graph of the countries that gave most military aid in terms of euros and dollars. So the United States was the first country on the first place, and Estonia was the second. They were not announcing a lot, but just giving a really huge help. That was like, that astonished us a lot. So we didn't know the real scale of the help. But the thing is that we will get a more support, meaning from the Eastern European countries, Baltic states, and even from the Nordic countries, yes, from Sweden, Finland. So it was more expected due to the historical memory as well.
And the next question is about the 9th of May. 9th of May, you know, that's Some countries celebrate the day of victory. It's ordinary 9th of May means Soviet concept of victory. You know that Baltic countries don't celebrate this day because we consider that is impossible because it was just second occupation. And today we know that Russia would like to organize military parade or some kind in Mariupol in 9th of May and to present it as a sign of victory. My question is how Ukraine will celebrate or in some way symbolize 9th of May if Ukraine knows about this attempt to organize military or some kind victory parade in Mariupol in this one day. What will be, on your opinion, politics of this day in Ukraine?
The 9th of May was also a very contradictory date for Ukrainians. There were a lot of discussions even before the war. Mainly they were raised after 2014 concerning the shifting of the day or changing the day of the commemorating the victims of the Second World War and the victory over Nazi regime to the 8th of May. In that way that we will, how to say, celebrate the victory over Nazis and commemorate all the victims of the Second World War together with most of the European countries. Unfortunately, even yesterday, our parliament didn't, there was a proposal forwarded by the opposition, or before war opposition parties. Now we do not have opposition parties, I mean, trying to be united, yes, on changing already this date, because it is also one of the ways to show and to disrupt and to ruin all this, even this connection with the Russian Federation, with this past Soviet past. But unfortunately, our parliamentarian didn't manage to adopt this law and to change the date. I suppose that in future we will come to that very soon. I think that maybe next year already Ukrainians will have the celebration. It's difficult for me personally because I can explain that there is a different perception of this day still now in different regions of Ukraine. So in the western part of Ukraine, as most of people were also seeing and perceiving the liberation of the Russian army in 1945 as a new occupation. Though in the central part and eastern part of Ukraine, they were like doing the same. I mean, seeing and understanding the 9th of May is like a day of when their grandfathers, grandmothers got the victory over Nazi, because really the central and eastern part of Ukraine was more affected by the Nazi regime, soldiers, and then even the western part of Ukraine. So, and as we see that yesterday's event showed that there is not unity, still not unity in the parliament. And
in spite of the war.
Yeah, despite of the war. But I think as in other cases, I mean, with the other Soviet days, for example, with the 23rd of February, the day of Russian army, Ukraine has already finished with that, and we are not celebrating for several years. We have a separate date of Ukrainian army. Of course, Mariupol and this so-called parade there, that is something that Putin wants at least to show as one of the victories to Russians, yes. How can it be perceived by Ukrainians? Only negatively, of course. I think it will be also one of them if they, and unfortunately they would do that, I think, that will also maybe will be a push for Ukrainian society to go away from the 9th of May as a day of big celebration of victory. We unfortunately can't change and influence the situation in Mariupol now, as it except as a territory of Azov plant is the city is occupied, yes, already fully by Russian troops and authorities, so we cannot prevent doing that. But I think, as I said, I see a good sign in that. So having, so they will, that will push Ukrainians to rethink what day of real victory in the Second World War is a real day of victory. Because, as I said, in Ukrainian, in Baltic states, in other countries, so that was for us was one victory of one regime over another regime. For the Western Europe, it was liberation, but for us, it was a new and sometimes even awful occupation.
So perhaps, Gintautas, you would like to ask the last question or to summarize or to wish something. I imagine that we are very close to each other this time because you are at Vytautas Magnus University, where we are.
So my last question is related to this one about Mariupol and the military parade, because Russia organized warfare not only in military but as well in informational areas, you know, and regionally this 9th of May will be the next step in informational warfare. You know, and even this parade will be organized, as I read in Russian newspapers, in some kind of building of bridge between Mariupol and Moscow, with including of many of pictures from Second World War and Reichstag in Berlin, how they occupied and bombed Berlin. Now they occupied in the simulacrum way Mariupol, you know, in the same way, but in any way these pictures will be presented, you know, some interrelations between Second World War, between Mariupol and the victories of Russians. And my question, because this informational attack will be directed against many of Ukrainians as well, how they will react on such, you know, such I would say privatization of victory in the Second World War, and that this Berlin as some kind, you know, similarity between Mariupol and Reichstag.
You know that the Russian Federation has long ago have taken all the victory of the Nazis only on their behalf, yes? So saying that and claiming that only Russians were those who defeated the Nazis. But we all know that's not true, that the Russian or the Red Army consisted of many nationalities, and most of them were Ukrainians, Belarusians, and so on and so forth. Of course, that's for them it's like a huge propaganda tool, yes, to show that the whole military operation, as they call this war now, was they were already drawing some parallels, saying that in 1945, we liberated the whole Europe from the Nazi, and as Ukraine now is a Nazi state, yes, so that's the aim of the special military operation, as you remember at the very beginning, was to denazify Ukraine. And Mariupol was one of the focal points, yes, because Azov is like one of the awful Nazi military union is was terrifying and torturing Mariupol citizens for many years, and the Russian troops have come to liberate the Mariupol citizens. And they will just, that's or normal for them, it's very natural for them to draw such parallel and the similarities. So as they bombed Reichstag in order to liberate the whole Europe, they had to bomb Mariupol just in order to liberate the citizens. But unfortunately, I would say there are some people, I think in Mariupol as well, that were thinking that you and that Azov, though we know also Azov is not the only military unit represented in Mariupol, and even now in the Azov steel plant, there are Marines, police, and so on and so forth, but they are like taking this as a Azov military union as a like a flag, yes, showing that only they are there. I would say that I had a conversation with a friend from Mariupol that escaped, and she said that even sitting in the basement on the shelling of being on the shelling, some Mariupol citizens were saying that these awful Azovs are shelling them, still believing that no, it's not Russians doing that.
Yeah, that's what Sergei Pakhomenko also unfortunately mentioned, that some proletariatian Soviet mentality citizens think that it's Ukrainian fault.
Yes, unfortunately, because that I think the only Ukrainian fault was that Ukrainian authorities were not counteracting propaganda. Even during so efficiently, even during the 8 years of war. And I think that the best counteracting of propaganda Russia itself has done. So if we take, for example, Kharkiv, yes, the city is close 40 kilometers from the Russian border. Yes, and if you watch some videos 2 days before the war started, so the journalists were asking Kharkiv citizens, did they believe, or did they believe that the Russia will attack? They had a really huge also interaction and connection, many relatives in Russia. So most of them were saying, no, it's just a provocation, and Westerns are exaggerating, so on and so forth. Now you should talk to the Kharkiv citizens. Most of them are like hating Russians.
Like Lvivians became.
Yes, they have become the Lvivians. And also very interesting opinion I have heard recently from colleagues from the south of our country. So most citizens of Ukraine from the east, from the south, despite the war which started in 2014, didn't believe that such a full-scale invasion could really happen. And he said, one of my friends, he said that, I was so embarrassed and so just wondered that in the west part of Ukraine, which has no borders with Russia, yes, so that you were not so much shocked with the Russian invasion as we were. So saying that the western part of Ukraine is saying, oh, again, Russians are attacking us. So we are like are always ready to counteract, and we always are aware of the enemy we have, even not having common border with it.
Well, thank you very much for your very elaborative answers. I would like to thank you for this interview, and I would like to remind our dear viewers that we just talked to Marianna Gladysh from Lviv University, who is currently exactly where we are, in Kaunas, yes, Lithuania.